Would you like to call the meeting to order?
Call the meeting to
Mrs.
order.
Vice Chair? Okay.
I will call Manistee Brownfield Authority meeting to order. The Vice Chair? Okay, I'll believe you.
You weren't here, so you got elected.
I guess apparently I got elected.
When you don't come, you get all kinds of surprises.
Do we need a second for that or not?
The roll call, all the members are here except Roger Yoder. And we also have Roman from Fishback, our consultant. Roman Wilson is also here.
Remotely.
Via Zoom or Teams. So there's Roman. Say hi, Roman.
Hey, Roman.
Hi, Roman.
All right, now we're on to number 3. I'll slide this over.
Yeah, slide that over because I can't see.
There you
Okay. Number 3, I need an approval of the agenda.
I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, and then all in favor?
Aye.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And then number 4, which I can't see.
Oh, public hearing.
Public hearing. We have no public hearing this week at this meeting. Public comments. Do we have any public comment?
Doesn't look that way.
No public comments.
Moving on to correspondence.
I've not received any correspondence.
All right. Moving on to approval of minutes.
So the minutes were included from the last meeting in your packet. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at them or not.
I did.
I did.
So I will make a motion to approve them.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, a financial report. I will hand that one over to Ed to discuss with us.
Sure, so in your packet, we had a balance sheet and a revenue and expense statement for the Brownfield Authority as of October 31st. I have the balance sheet up on the screen for you. We have about $79,000 in cash, but at that time, we had not paid out the tax capture payable yet, so $55,000 of that was a liability that was due to the different taxing jurisdictions and or not the taxing jurisdictions, the developer and the city for stuff from the Brownfield plans and administrative fees as well. And so that leaves a fund balance of about $22,000, which is just a slight increase, or actually $22,000 was the beginning fund balance, and we have a slight increase of about $1,745. So our ending fund balance is about $23,900. And you'll see on the revenue and expense what makes up that surplus. We received a $2,000 fee for the developer, the application for a Brownfield review that you're going to see here shortly. And we've spent about $250 on membership and dues, which is my membership in the Michigan Economic Development Association. So we haven't had any other expenses besides that. Are there any questions on the revenue and expense or the balance sheet?
No.
No?
Okay. Madam Chair, we'll probably need a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion if you want. I got a whole bag full of motions.
That'll keep the meeting
I'll second it then.
moving. All right. Everybody in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay. So next item on the agenda is the old business.
Old business, looks like we have none. And then number 10, new business. We've got consideration of an application for redevelopment project funding, the Manistee Gateway Project. Can you give us an overview on that, Ed?
Sure. So Roman, I'll have you jump in here at any time too. The city received an application for a Brownfield redevelopment plan from Little River Holdings and CL Real Estate LC or LLC, and I included that application in your packet, and so we can just kind of run through that if we want. The project name is the Gateway Project, and it consists of parcels down at the east end of River Street, just west of US 31 on both sides of the road. So there's, I believe, 7 parcels that they're all listed here in the project development. And they have several attachments on the project that show the scope of it. So I think I want to scroll to those so I can kind of walk you through it. So this is the project that we talked about at the last meeting. And, you know, some things have evolved since we last met and are evolving even as we sit here. But just to kind of go over what the project is, this is the House of Flavors property up here on the right. And this is that office building. This is the old, there was a retail store here and dry cleaner building. This used to be Riley's Bait and Tackle. This was Cadillac Plumbing and Heating, and this is the detailing place. So these parcels here are all what are going to become part of the Gateway project. And the project itself is multifaceted. The primary component of it is going to be a hotel where the House of Flavors and the office building sit. And I'm trying to find a rendering. I think there's a rendering in here, isn't there?
Yes.
Roman, towards the back. Here it is. Here's the draft rendering right here. So you can see they're proposing a hotel here. It'll be multi-level. It's going to have some conference and meeting space. Then on this side, they would have a welcome center. Originally, in this application, they were proposing a meeting space where Cadillac Plumbing and Heating was. And then over here, they were proposing like a business incubator with possibly some storefronts. But we just had a meeting yesterday where the developers came back and have kind of tweaked this a little bit. Part of the problem is the original plan had underground parking on the site for the hotel. This here would be an underground ramp going underneath here. But after they got further into the project, when you've got all the challenges with the high water and the contaminated soils and everything else being that close to the river, the cost just did not make any sense. They were, I think, Roman, correct me if I'm wrong, the cost was at least 3 times as high as an above-ground parking ramp would be.
Oh, I would assume at least.
That sound like it rings a bell?
correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that's correct.
So what they've done, or they shared some revised plans, and again, this is all very preliminary because the DDA also has to kind of get involved with this and stuff. But basically turning this welcome center to be more lengthwise. I think they're still planning on keeping the Riley building for historical purposes, but then having this space, so all of the Cadillac plumbing, and then probably half of this lot being an above ground parking ramp. And then on this part of the lot, possibly having some retail space with some residential above it. So some of this is still in flux. But the purpose of the meeting today isn't to bless the details of this plan. It's to say there's enough information here to kind of go ahead and start actually drafting a brownfield plan and drafting a 381 work plan and moving forward with the process. And there's fees associated with that, which basically our consultant Roman, because of the policy that the board has, would be doing that work on behalf of the developer and on behalf of us for the developer. So that's kind of where we would go with this with the next process. In this application, they show, they have some site plans and they have estimated costs that they're going to be incurring as part of this. And Roman, I thought it might be good to maybe have you step in here. Do you have a copy of the application in front of you?
I do.
So maybe kind of just run through what some of the environmental things are, what your thoughts are on the project, the different project components like public infrastructure and that sort of thing for the board. So basically starting on page, I guess it would be page 3.
9
Or basically number 8. So
Yep.
number 8 on the application, and then we can just kind of walk through some of the attachments too, if you don't mind, for the benefit of the board. And they can hear you well because I fixed the speaker issue, so.
Okay, great. And I apologize, maybe if there's questions to me, maybe Ed will have to repeat those just because it's a little bit muffled. It isn't too bad. In the event something comes up, feel free to ask me a question. But yeah, to go through this fairly quickly, the proposed development is estimated at, I'm starting with 9 a little bit. Item 9 is roughly $30+ million development. So components of the development in item 8 that are in this cost. And again, this application had material that has been altered since it was submitted, which that's okay. It's just kind of the evolution of a project as you get into the brownfield planning stages. But one of the big components was the infrastructure piece. So the underground parking being moved over to above grade parking on the south side of river there is estimated at a little bit over $4 million. That is an eligible activity expense under Act 381, so that's listed here. Some of the other, and that could be a private-public collaboration, likely. Maybe heavy on the public there, but still working out those details. A couple other items relative to infrastructure would be improvements to River Street, basically from Division to 31. There would be some road improvements, some utilities, upgrades to help facilitate the development, and then also along the north boundary of the project would be improvements to the Riverwalk infrastructure. So cleaning that up, providing a little more accessibility, and just creating a unique environment there for public to access and enjoy the waterfront there. Private investment, which all the properties have been secured by Little River Holdings, a little over $2 million in acquisition costs. The site prep numbers, again, this is related to eligible activities under Act 381 of $250,000. The environmental remediation number, over $1 million, pertains to historical use, as a couple of these parcels had uses as Ed mentioned, a dry cleaner, and then also where House of Flavors there's a former gasoline station. So those both have resulted, that historical use resulted in impact to the soil and groundwater. So development activities relating to those pieces of property, whether it's soil management or groundwater management or vapors potentially entered into a building where there would be some mitigation required. Those are the costs that are associated with that. Now, this number possibly is high because it was assuming an underground parking structure where there was a lot of contaminated soil that would need to be disposed at a landfill. So that number likely will be lower if an above ground structure is where the parking lands. And we hit on the construction, and then there was some engineering permitting type stuff that is associated that could be eligible as well. Moving, I guess, to the next page, that kind of spells out a little more detail of these costs from environmental demolition. Also is another component, but the environmental, I guess I don't need to spell this all out, but again, the soil management disposal piece was a pretty significant chunk of the cost, so that likely would go down significantly. And of course, to prep the site, all the existing structures, because of their age, would need to have asbestos surveys to quantify the presence of asbestos and integrity of that, so that abatement could occur prior to demolition. can see that there's also demolition costs in there. So, roughly 300,000 in asbestos surveys, abatement / demolition anticipated, which are eligible expenses that would be in the Brownfield plan. Um, and again, kind of estimated numbers with the infrastructure improvements being on the neighborhood of 600,000 to 750,000 for River Street and the Riverwalk.
And just to clarify, some of the city infrastructure, a lot of it's below ground, so there's water main improvements and sewer main improvements that they need to do, and then, repairing the surface, maybe they spruce up the streetscape a little bit, and then some stuff on the Riverwalk.
Can I ask you, I know that was an old gas station. Were the tanks ever removed? Is it just ground that has to be tested, or are there tanks to be removed?
Roman, did you hear, Marlene question was where the detail shop is, there used to be underground fuel tanks there. Do you know if those have been removed and what the level of contamination is there?
Yeah, it's my understanding that all the tanks have been removed. In looking at the environmental due diligence at that location, the issues that were there have been closed out by the state. So there's minimal environmental concern on that particular parcel. I know that if anyone had observed, there were some tanks at the Cadillac plumbing location as well. Those were recently removed, this past summer, and I think and that was utilizing some state funds there. So, with an older corridor there, it's always possible that some additional tanks could be identified, but at this point, I think the due diligence that was done identified those historical uses and doesn't appear to be any more tanks. I guess to go on with, Ed and I went through an exercise to project the taxable value based on the investment. We produced some TIF tables just to kind of understand what this might look like and to assist the developer in their evaluation of the project. We assumed about, maybe roughly 40% increase in taxable value based on a $30 million investment, and then ran some just projections, tax increment generated, and I think over a period of 5 years, it might generate roughly 3.5 in local, state tax increment revenues that could be captured, 3.5 million. And so that based on potentially 4 to 6 million in eligible activities, that it could be roughly a 10-year payback. Again, these are just all items that we kind of went through to help foster the conversation and discussion. But nonetheless, it's going to generate a significant amount of tax increment revenue, so that eligible activities could be reimbursed, all of which we were discussing, whether it's environmental, demolition, the infrastructure, that would all fall under that.
What's the construction period?
It really depends on when they break ground. So if they break ground sometime late spring, maybe early summer, I think they're probably looking at least 18 months. Isn't that what they've been talking about, 12 to 18 months? But I think 12 is optimistic, 18 is probably more realistic.
Okay, so maybe summer
And could even be
2022.
2 years. I mean, it depends, if they're building an above-ground parking deck too, and they got a hotel, and who knows what COVID's gonna do and all that. But, so Roman, if we scroll down then to some of the attachments, we kind of went through the project description, and we've kind of done a site overview, and then there's some drawings that were on there as well, which everybody, I think, has had a chance to look at those. I kind of want to get down to the other addendums here, see if I can get to them.
Kind of hit on the project timetable a little bit. Ed went through that as far as when they would like to, really would like to initiate this in 2021, potential for development to be completed in 2023.
Yeah, so there's the timetable right there.
Yep.
And, everything we've heard is that that's still kind of the target. But we're not the only approval in this process, right? There's a lot of other ones. The DDA's got to get on board, City Council has to get on board, they've got to line up all their financing if they haven't gotten all that yet. They're still finalizing plans, so there's still a lot of moving pieces. And the reason we wanted to have this meeting is if the board is on board with this project, then we can move that to the next step. You're not approving anything today if you were to approve this, it's just going to the next step. And that sets Roman free once we get payment from the developer to start working on the Brownfield plan. And that's where he can't submit a Brownfield plan that doesn't have all the details wrapped up to the state. So that's going to force the developer to kind of start tying up some of these loose ends, which they're still working with. It's going to force the DDA to decide what they want to do and kind of move forward. So this is really one of the first steps in the process. And so we encourage them to get that into us so that we could have this conversation.
The other thing too I might mention is the importance of being able to go to the next step allows us to get some definition and get some details nailed down, but also allows us to kind of have some open discussions with the state, who's going to have to be a key partner in the project, whether it's approving tax increment financing on their end or any other kind of incentives that they might be able to bring to the table. So being able to have a draft Brownfield document to have them weigh in on or look at, they can assist with some guidance, that's really helpful in continuing to move.
The next attachment in the study was their kind of short and succinct market feasibility study, but the developers have told us that they really think that there is a market here for this type of a property. It's a little bit higher end. They're going to cater to that type of clientele. It's right there in a very visible, prominent spot, and they feel comfortable that they'll be able to, sell enough rooms to make it viable. And then the next attachment, economic activity, it talks about, how this will have a positive impact in the whole community with, people being able to shop downtown. They're optimistic about the use of their event space, which again, they were going to have in the Cadillac Plumbing building, but will now be in their building. They had that space there anyway, but they would probably just utilize it a little bit more. So they're pretty happy about that. And they were talking about, the economic impact of this. So if they have $4 or $5 million a year in room sales, it's like a 3-time multiplier is what the studies show as the economic impact of the retail, dining, services, fuel, all that stuff. I don't know that they put that in here, but that was the conversation that we've had with them. Job creation, that's kind of important. They're saying that the redevelopment will involve about 300 construction jobs, and it's projected to create approximately 145 new jobs. That number, again, might vary a little bit since they've kind of changed plans a little bit, but it's still going to be north of 100, I'm sure, with a hotel like that and the event or the visitor center and the tenants that'll move in there. Roman, you want to talk about the environmental challenges maybe in a little more detail than that you were mentioning earlier?
Sure. I think we covered the asbestos pretty well, but all the building structures will have to have an asbestos survey. Will determine nature of building materials, the condition, and have a specific abatement plan for asbestos containing materials that's required prior to demo. With respect to soil and groundwater, there's petroleum impact beneath the House of Flavor site. So the hotel is directly over that. So I would expect that for footings, that will be in utility corridors. There will be some soil removal necessary that will have to be properly disposed. While original plans had an underground parking structure, as we noted. That's no longer the case, so that really cut down that soil removal number that we had in this application. But nonetheless, there'll still be some of that. There's probably going to need to be potentially, I should say potentially, the need for any kind of utility corridors where might be some perched groundwater. There may be some dewatering that will need to be, the groundwater will need to be managed appropriately before a discharge to a sanitary sewer. Probably one of the bigger things is because there is petroleum there and possibly, I don't know if there's dry cleaner chemicals, solvents that have migrated underneath that, quite possibly. That will really require a vapor intrusion mitigation system under that structure, and possibly other structures in the project footprint. Really, that requires the developer to have a vapor barrier beneath the structure, an impermeable sprayed on, typically how it's done during construction, barrier that also would require a venting system. It could be passive, it could be active, just depends on the final layout of the structure and what the state would require. And that can be a costly thing. So that's in this projection. It's certainly going to be required for some of the buildings, not sure about all of them yet. There'll need to be some additional assessment. When the properties were acquired, there was evaluation done to determine site conditions to a degree, but when a development goes forward, do care, making sure that you're not exacerbating problems or having unacceptable exposures. There's a little more need to do further assessment to verify those conditions and to accurately determine costs related to response measures that may be necessary to help the development along. Those are the primary things that will be encountered from an environmental perspective. There may be some, if some of these properties are sold or leased, there may be some due diligence required on that end as well, but that pretty much covers all the environmental.
Okay, and then the next part of the application is the brownfield status. Clearly, all of these sites meet the definition of a facility per the act, so there isn't any issues there. And then financial credentials. This is an area that Roman and I have talked about. At this stage, they don't really provide much of that, but certainly when we get a little further into this process, they're going to have to lay their finances bare. They certainly have to do it for MEDC if they're looking at getting some money from them, which they are. And I don't see why the city and or this board shouldn't have the same level of detail to look at it, just to give us a comfort level. I'm sure this development group is very well financed. I'm sure Little River Holdings is very well financed, but we've had issues in the past where the developers maybe aren't as well financed, and we just need to make sure we're doing the due diligence on that to make sure that they've got their financing lined up and and can meet their commitments. And a lot of this will be addressed if we get to that point in a development and reimbursement agreement too. But that's one of the areas where the city hasn't always done the best job in making the developers divulge that type of information. So we're going to make sure we get at least what we need so we can be comfortable with their financial strength. Which again, I don't have many worries, but it's still a good practice. And Roman, you can comment on that too. The MEDC puts that really through a microscope when they're looking at it too. And they're not giving out potentially as much money as the city and or the state's going to be from the school fund and stuff in this. So I think we owe it to have that kind of diligence.
Do they already have a developer, or will this go out for bid?
No, they do. CL, is it CL Development? CL?
Yeah, real estate.
CL Real Estate Development. They're out of Illinois. They've done lots of projects. They're pretty accomplished developer. They like to focus on smaller communities and have kind of a a project that is transformational, they call it, or, you know, kind of a really big deal, and so that's where their focus is and kind of their specialty.
Look through their website, they've got some outside of Illinois too, so.
Yeah, they don't work just in Illinois, they are in multiple states. And here's an example of some of it. They've got some in Illinois, Hillsdale, Michigan, Fruitport, Michigan, which was Little River Holdings. And they're also and I didn't realize this until recently, they're partnering with, Little River Holdings is partnering with Hollander Development on the project where the old Washington School used to be. So they're definitely involved and you know, have enough experience to get the job done. And then I just included what our policy was that we adopted back in July. So where they're at right now is the step 2 application. And so they've submitted, you know, 2-1, they've submitted that. Sub-step 2 is Roman and I have both reviewed this. We've sent it to you for the board to look at. So that's kind of where we're at. Roman and I don't feel like there's any other information at this point that's required from the developer for this phase. There will be a lot more information if we get to step 3. So what's in front of the board today is to take a look at their application and decide on whether, you know, we think it's a worthy enough project to proceed to step 3, which is, you know, starting to get more into the weeds on that. So that's what the action item is in front of you today. I don't know if the board has any questions of me or of Roman, or if you want to discuss it some more, you know, before we proceed to a vote on that. Any questions? All right. So, Madam Chair, I think we probably need a motion, kind of as I worded it in the second paragraph on number 10.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Or I can't make the motion, can I?
Technically not.
No.
I got a bag of them. I'll make a motion.
Pip is our motion man today.
Yeah.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, you shocked right in there, right? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
All right, next item is staff reports. I don't really have anything to mention. There was some interest in the old gas station at the corner, kitty corner from the Ramsdell, so at First Street and Maple Street, but that's really kind of died down. So there's nothing real active right now on that, although I think it probably will pop back up. But what I really wanted to talk about is virtual meetings. You know, with the COVID thing, and with City Hall shutting down, we're not going to be able to meet in person like this. So we are going to have to meet. We'll probably be meeting more regularly once this starts to get into action. So I didn't know if you had a preference for doing Zoom meetings, Teams meetings. We can do audio, we can do video, we can do both. I'm not sure what the board's preference is on that. We've had good luck with Teams, but we use Zoom really, and that's real easy too for city council meetings. So we can do either one. It really doesn't make a difference to me.
So either one would work for me.
Do you have a preference, Megan, or?
I've been using Zoom for the most part, but I'm open to Teams.
Okay. Marlene, do you have,
Matter?
okay, do you have internet that you can get on Zoom then, or?
Well, I have my grandson and his wife moved in with 3 kids and a dog. And so I can use his computer.
Okay, if not, there's always a dial-in number too. So
That's what
just,
I've been doing.
okay, so I mean, this though, if you've got access to a computer, it's better because you can get the video then, it just
Yeah,
doesn't.
and the thing I like about Teams is you can create a whole channel team. We can put documents, we can, you know, have conversations. I don't know if Zoom has that capability. I'm sure it probably does. I'm just not as
Probably
familiar
not
with it.
with the license we have, but we've got Office 365, so, and Kip, do you have a preference whether it's?
Yeah, it doesn't, I've done both as well,
Okay,
so whatever.
so we'll probably use Teams just because that's kind of the city's platform, and then we could maybe put some documents out there and stuff if we wanted to, or create stuff, but, when we get closer to a meeting, I'll make sure that everybody has that. I don't know what Roger has. I'm assuming he gets his email, so he probably has a computer at home that he can do that on too. You know, the only thing with Teams is it doesn't give you the ability to dial in for the public. So that may be the only reason we have to do Zoom, because technically we got to post these meetings, right? And we have to give the public a chance to participate. So that would be, you know, as it stands right now, and I forgot about this, Teams doesn't have that ability to just have a dial a number where Zoom does. So I think we probably have to do Zoom for now unless Teams changes that. And we don't get public participation anyway, but with a project of this size, as we're moving forward, I expect there'll be more of that.
Thank you.
So that's all I wanted to talk about. That's gonna be probably the kind of the path we have to go on for the foreseeable future. And next meeting dates, I don't have any. You know, depending on how we go with moving through step 3 here, there could be one next month, or probably I'm thinking January is probably gonna be the next time we meet. But it'll be that second Tuesday in January, or I can't remember. It's either the first or second Tuesday is kind of our hold that date, so I'll let you know in plenty of time though. Is that present a conflict for anybody? Is anybody going south this year?
If I'm south this year, I can join you. via
Virtually.
Teams.
Nice.
So, okay, so that's all I had. Roman, did you have anything you wanted to tell the board or talk about?
I don't have anything further, Ed.
Okay. All right, so I guess we're on 13, which is member discussion.
Any discussion?
No?
And, need to adjourn, I guess.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion.
No way. Second it.
I know that's surprising.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.